Peterborough can see the big wiggle here.
Mohammed Patel wins here.
Other than Yuri Sivicic.
Oh, he's done it!
Look at these two go.
He's going to do it! His first victory!
The World Championship is done.
What a race it's been!
Hello and welcome to the first race here for the FSR Stockcar Pro Cup Series for 2022. Don't mind the pictures in the background. We are at Road Atlanta for this first race, the Road Atlanta 100. To introduce you to this series, following the last couple of seasons, we have had the Indy Pro Series, where FSR in the off-season from the main season have used the DW12 Delara. And it looks like we are going to be having a very fun series, though, this time, because we go to the Stockcar 2018 on rFactor 2. It's a very interesting car. Indeed, it's a very wiggly car. It's something that is going to be just a little bit different for these drivers from what they're used to, and also for FSR, going away from the normal sort of open-wheel style racing. And to bring you through the calendar, this is what we are racing. We have got the Road Atlanta 100, the Gateway 150, the California 175, and then the Daytona 225 as well. So 4 races, 4 different track styles. We've got the road course, the short track, the super speedways, and the speedways as well to round out this season. And to bring you through the coverage is myself, Cameron Rodger. And alongside me is Zach Sweeney. Zach is certainly going to be something quite different for these drivers from what they're used to here at FSR, but I think it should be a pretty fun series. Absolutely, this is going to be something very different to what they're used to, and they're going to have to get on with it. They're going to have to work out how they're going to study this car, how they're going to get fast at it. It's certainly something that the drivers are going to need to really master over the course of the season. Here we go on to track into the qualifying session, and I think this is going to really prove to be quite a sort of an open one. We do have over 34 cars on the field, and it's really going to be open to see who is going to, get into their rhythm with this car.
Oh yeah, it is going to be those that can really adapt quickly will flourish, definitely, and definitely a good track sort of to get us underway for the season. Of course, unfortunately, we couldn't quite get it underway last week, but now we're here and finally at Road Atlanta. It's a circuit that is going to be really challenging for these stock cars because they've got a lot of power, not so much in terms of downforce, still a fair bit of grip, but you can see there just testing the limits through the S's as you run downhill. It's a really roller coaster circuit, and cars like these with their limited capabilities and the small margin for error with these cars, coupled with such a circuit like Road Atlanta, it's going to be definitely a test of the good between the greats.
It's going to be a fun one indeed. And as you mentioned, we have the 4-race format over the next few weeks, over the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks. We're going to get those races, and I think it's going to be sort of quite key to how we see the drivers adapt over the course of the different styles of circuit. Today is obviously the road course variant, and that is going to be something that these drivers have a lot of experience with, and they're certainly going to know what they're doing. But the difference is going to come when we get to those oval races and see how that is going to work for the guys who maybe in some ways specialize on those types of circuits. And you're probably going to see the order change just a little bit when we get to that, because not only is it a different style of racing, the car is also different. There's some different sort of aero upgrades to the car, some different suspension as well. So the car handles a lot differently on those tracks.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's gonna, as we say, you're gonna need to adapt race by race if you want to succeed in this in this series over the course of the next few weeks. It's gonna be really interesting to see. Right now, we are in qualifying, 11 minutes on the clock, and again, a bit different, even in terms of just format. It's something that's quite dissimilar from what they are usually expecting when it comes to FSR. Of course, during the normal season, you only get 3 laps. Now you get an unlimited amount, so you almost, in a sense, change how you approach the session, because you don't just have those 3 laps. You've got as many as you can fit within that 15-minute time window, and I think that it allows alleviates a lot of pressure off these drivers, because now they can go out with the sort of the security that they've got time to put the lap in, and that can really allow the quickest of the quick times, because they have the ability and the capacity to go out and set those quick times without having to stress about making that mistake on that final run.
Yeah, and the fact that they have the unlimited laps this time around is going to be a big factor in that. As you're mentioning, people making mistakes, that was one main factor for the formats that we used previously in the main season. They had only 3 total hot laps during the time, and they weren't allowed to do those consecutively. They had to be single lap runs, and that was really to put the pressure on the drivers to try and get those laps. Whereas here, they're completely free, they're completely open, so they can work into the session, they can build themselves up. As Harry Smith there, massive wheel spin there coming out of 10B, and that is not going to be an improvement for him in the end as he was up. But that is certainly an example of someone who can do a couple of laps in a row, but then obviously have to escape after that one.
Yeah, again, it is a car that's fairly tricky to drive. Not one that I've had the personal experience of being able to do so myself, but from what I've heard, just looking at it, it's a car that's got a lot of power, not so much in terms of aerodynamic grip. It's got decent-ish brakes relative to what you would expect, but of course, the differential towards the rear end of the car is locked, so you can't have the different wheel speeds throughout a corner, which usually would really help in a lot of different categories, different series, to sort of maintain the grip through the corner. With this one, what you put your foot down is what you're going to get at the rear, and it's so squeamish. So with a car like this, it's going to be so difficult to maintain that consistency, not only to put the lap in qualifying, as we see Jake Dennehan on provisional pole at the moment, and that's very quickly beaten by Jone Simoncic with a 1:15 4:88. Again, getting the lap done in qualifying is not going to tell the full story, because purely of how topsy-turvy this car can be.
Absolutely, and also the fact that when we get to the race format, as Erkan there goes up, or stays in the same place, but goes up a little bit faster on his lap time. We are with the format that we have. We got the sprint race followed by the qualifying. It's 9 laps followed by 28 around here, with a reverse grid for that feature race, as we've seen in previous seasons. Well, so that is certainly going to be a big factor. As Vosnitzer there also improves, but stays in his position. Well, so quite a few drivers just trying to work out the limits of their cars, and lap times very close. But for sure, that reverse grid after the sprint race going to the feature race, big factor with how some of these drivers approach the race. But with so many drivers on the field, as I mentioned, we do have 34, so the tower's not even big enough to show all of them at once. It's certainly going to be quite intriguing for those guys who can get themselves into that reverse grid position.
It's going to shake things up for sure. Any reverse grid in any series is always going to shake things up. Just make it a little bit more interesting because you've got those that are slightly quicker towards the sort of the back end of the margin of the reverse grid. The slightly, I don't want to say slower, but maybe less fortunate in race one that are then towards the front end of race two. And sometimes you do get that of those that are less fortunate but still really quick that then run away with race two, and it's then their chance to sort of redeem themselves and get one up over a Porsche and maybe in the sprint race or things like that. But if you do have sort of that reverse grid format, it eliminates the sort of the expectation that you have, because after qualifying 9 times out of 10 everyone's where they should be in that sense. You know, Jone Simoncic, Jake Danahan, Damian Skovron, they're all going to be towards the sharp end no matter what. They are some of the quickest drivers, you know, on rFactor 2. That is without a doubt. That is where they are going to be. Those are the people you would expect to be towards the front end of the grid. But with a reverse grid, that's, you know, put on its head. You've got people out of place. You've got people that then have to fight their way through. You've got people that maybe rely on qualifying well and then having an easier race, then having to deal with the pressure of being in a pack. And with that, it just, you know, shakes things up so much and has the recipe for a really good show.
Indeed, I think it's going to be great to see as we see Borham and Land there stay in that 12th place currently. There's a few drivers obviously trying to work their way through. We haven't actually spoken about a lot of the teams and drivers just yet, but you'll recognize quite a few of them from you know, various events on rFactor 2, but also here at Formula Sim Racing as well. At the top, you've obviously got the 3-time FSR World Champion Jone Simoncic and his teammate of Damian Skovron, I should say, in 3rd place there. But also in 4th there, we've got Colin Spork for Race Clutch, your newly crowned Formula Sim Racing World Champion from this season, just a couple of months ago, has moved from Unicorns of Love to Race Clutch and is already up the front there. But also on screen, we've got RSR. Seen them out in Indy Pro last season as well, as we've got other teams such as Visceral, Wanaco as well, always coming through for the FSR special seasons, and it's going to be a fun time to see how they can go as Ryan Elliott there comes across the line, stays in that 8th place as it stands.
It's, yeah, honestly, I do love, you know, the fact that we've got some veterans, some slightly newer guys, those that are newly crowned, you know, the likes of Colin Spork, and, you know, and he's 17 years old and he's coming onto the grid and competing with some of the best. It is fantastic to see, and it is just a clash of titans in a sense. Those, you know, while they haven't maybe had the chance to go head to head on a track or whatever, come here and do something slightly different, and to have that experience and to have just a bit of fun with it in a sense, and race for pride and to see who truly is the best. It's going to be good to see, hyping it up, you know, a lot. But, you know, to have the likes of Jone Simoncic, Jake Danahan, Damian Skovron and Colin Spork inside the top 4, separated by, you know, about a 10th and a half, and don't forget Andre as well there, and Jan Wisnitzer, the top 6 separated not even by 0.2 of a second. It's just awesome to see, and to have them clash on a circuit and have these, you know, prestigious teams in sim racing to just have on the same circuit for the next 4 weeks, a short and sharp series just to keep us going. Honestly, it's going to be fantastic to see. And, you know, not just outside the top 6 as well. Look at how close the lap times are. Yes, it's a short circuit, only 75 seconds in length. But it's such a tricky circuit that, despite its short length, still requires a lot of skill to extract a lot of time. So the fact everyone is so close does set us up for a really, really good race. And of course, we always say with consistency in a track like this that qualifying isn't going to tell the whole story. Yeah, but again, it is still going to help. And with, you know, about 4.5 minutes left to go, we've still got a lot of questions left to be unanswered. And I'm just really excited to see who is going to get pole, because I think it could be pretty much anyone.
Certainly could be. As we enter the final 5 minutes now of the qualifying session, we see the drivers coming through the way of the final couple of laps that they'll be able to do. Here's Donat Prodan coming around the final corner for Visceral as they enter the world of Formula Sim Racing. Great to see him coming across the line. Is he going to be able to get himself up into it? I don't think it just is at this moment in time, but it's just so close between some of these positions that it will be very difficult indeed. As you see there, even the top 10, just 3 and a bit seconds between them, and quite a few teams there as Prodan spins out of that one.
Nicely pirouetted around as well to get it 360, which was awesome. Nice aesthetic there, just to send it around sideways, which is not what you want to be doing particularly in a race, but hey ho, if it looks cool, that's really all that matters. We're on board right now with Stavros Muzeidis, who is a driver that has definitely impressed over his time in Formula Sim Racing, especially over the last season. Really did make a name for himself, and at the moment is only P20, but again, a 10th of a second would see him up to P16, which, yeah, is definitely not anything bad to shy away from, and yeah, is Ooh, bit wide though through 10A and 10B. It's a tricky chicane. It is where we are going to see most of our action though, isn't it? 10A and 10B, because you come off of T7 all the way back down that flat out section through turn 8 and turn 9, and then you get to the heavy braking zone of turn 10A and 10B. And relative to their straight line speed, these cars aren't all too good on the brakes. And oh my word, that is pushing the limits there for Jan Wosnitzer to start another lap. I think he is going to back out of that one. But 10A and 10B, I'm expecting quite a little bit of chaos going down there.
Oh, as Costa goes way too wide there coming out turn 7. That's going to be a lap aborted for him. But yes, you're right. Turn 10A, 10B, the famous chicane, is going to be probably the best overtaking opportunity because it is the hardest braking zone, but also the slipstream. Be prepared for it. The slipstream in this car is pretty mega. If you are one who knows this car, there's going to be, especially on the first couple of laps when the drivers are so close together, you're going to be getting 2-3 wide into that chicane. And on the exit is actually very, very narrow, and therefore you might see some spicy action as we get to that part of the track as Chris Shepherd comes across the line. Can he improve? Yes, he does. Up to second place. Only half a tenth off Yanni Simičić, who's also improving as well. This is looking to be such a close fight.
Half a tenth between them, and August Lane as well up there in P3. This is coming right down to the wire. The pressure is definitely on, even though we said a bit of pressure is alleviated. There's Yanni Simičić just extending a slight lead there. Green through Sector 1, didn't improve through Sector 2, but a purple Sector 3 sees him a stretch advantage to just 88 1,000ths of a second, not much in it at all. He's now gone back to the pit lane, so I'm not entirely sure if he's going to be able to get another run in, maybe feeling a bit secure. But Chris Shepherd, a fantastic lap. I think Simičić is actually going to go out again. He might just have time for it. But yeah, heating up for a really, really close finish. You have to put that lap in, and now is really where it starts to count.
Yeah, all these drivers aborting laps is because they want to get back out in time for another lap. As always in FSR, if you start your lap before the time hits 0, you can finish it. So with about a minute and a half left and a minute 15 or so for the lap, that's why they're doing it now. So they've got enough time to leave the pit lane and start that lap. And if it wasn't aware already, this is a private session. So as much on the track map, you can see all of the drivers. The drivers themselves can only see their own car. So there's no distractions or track position fighting. It's all about getting themselves on the track at the right time. And that's why all those drivers there needing to see what they can do. We'll see what Erkan can do for TX3 out to the final corner. The wonderful green livery. He's going to be able to get himself further up inside the top 10. 9th at the moment. 4th it goes to him, but just below, Jake Dennehan is having an awesome lap here. Purple in that first sector. Can he get any sort of improvement as it stands? Yes, he goes to pole position by half a tenth, and that could be enough to hold on with just one lap to go for most.
Oh, it's going to be very, very close indeed. What can Yanni Simičić do? What can Chris Shepherd do? What can August Lane do? All of them now out onto their final laps of the session. Damien Skovron, I don't think was able to improve, unfortunately for him. So it's P5 at the best. Same too for Erkan in 6th. They ran off the 3rd row of the grid so far. Just keeping an eye on Yanni Simičić on the timing tower, just looking at those 3 bars, those 3 sector bars, waiting for them to light up. You can see Chris Shepherd there, white to the first sector, so not quite an improvement, but he's still got 2 sectors left to improve, and well, he's bailed out of that one. So it's looking even more likely for Dennehan, but Simičić is improving.
Certainly is. Barking out of this final corner for Juanico. They got 4 drivers on the field. Look out for them to be quite a strong presence. But what can the Peruvian do as he comes out to the final corner? Stays in 11th place, just behind his teammate. But of course, Yanni Simičić is one to look out for. Half a tenth off at the moment. Jake Dennehan's done an amazing job for Netrex Grand Prix to get himself up for a potential pole position here. But it looks like Yanni Simičić is going to be the one. The second sector is very late on this lap, just as we come through turn 9 here into the braking zone. It's not a green sector, but he has improved in that first one, and we know with just such little margins between these drivers, but that is all over the grass for Yanni Simičić, and he goes down the motorbike chicane, so he's not going to be able to improve on that one, and nor does Tomasz Vak coming out of turn 7 either. Loads of drivers pushing to the limit as we now get Darius Andre coming around the final corner, but he's not improving. Can he do anything just in that final chicane to try and improve his lap? No, he does not, as the laps come thick and fast over the course of the final couple of corners. While the teams and drivers work out where they're going to be starting the sprint race here for the first round. Fabian Ballet, he gets himself up into 11th place. And I think it's Paul August Lana is the final driver, at least in the top section, to go across the line. He's going to have a half spin there. He's not going to improve either. And that looks to be the grid for today's sprint race, Zach.
What a qualifying session that was. And yeah, Jake Dennehan pulled one out the bag there. I thought Jone Simoncic did have it. He looked so secure throughout the entirety of the session. But when it come to that final run, Dennehan just pulled something out of the bag. It was brilliant to see. But yeah, well, after qualifying, this is how the top 10 rack up can.
They certainly do. And running you down through the field, you see Jake Dennehan there for NetRex Grand Prix. And actually, one thing that this will be a good time to point out, as you can see, a lot of the teams here have actually made personal liveries as well. So if you look between Jake Dennehan in pole position and Jan Vosnitzer down in 9th, even though they're teammates, they've got completely different liveries. So try and look out for that to try and identify your driver and where you want to see them on the stream. But yes, only 4 tenths covering this top 10. Jake Dennehan, Jone Simoncic on that front row, followed by Shepard, August, Lana, Skovron, Erkan, Spork, your 2022 FSR World Champion, Darius Andre, Jan Vosnitzer, and Ricardo Costa, rounding out your top 10. It certainly looks to be a great event. And just while the drivers get prepared for the grid, we'll have a quick message from our sponsor. Welcome back to the first round of the FSR Pro Cup series here, using the stock cars on rFactor 2. The first round here being the Road Atlanta 100, the first of 4 races in this series, and it looks to be some good fun. Myself, Cameron Rodger, and Zach Sweeney taking you through the action today, and we have a 9 and 28 lap race coming for you. So it's a sprint and feature race format. The sprint race will use the qualifying grid, and the feature race will be a reverse grid. Between 8 and 12, that will be a random choice by the grid maker between 8 and 12 to work out who will be on pole. And of course, points being awarded for both of them. And here is what is coming up for the drivers over the next few weeks. We've got 4 races on the schedule. We've got a road course, a short track, a speedway, and a super speedway starting here at the Road Atlanta 100. And we have the Gateway 150, the California 175, the Daytona 225 later on in November. So this is going to be a really interesting schedule that we have coming up for you. And of course, we just had that qualifying session where we saw Jake Dennehan get himself out and ready to the front. And it's going to be quite a good opportunity for him as the drivers are just in their warm-up session. We'll go through potentially a couple of the teams and drivers that you want to be looking out for. Here is your 2022 FSR World Champion back in August. This young man, I should say, was crowned being the youngest world champion for quite a few years and managing to overcome Alex Siebel there in the final race in Brazil. He's now moved to Race Clutch, and I believe is only doing this race as a reserve. We'll see if he comes back for the oval races later on in the season, but he is certainly one to look out for, along with 3-time world champion Jone Simoncic, also Indy Pro Season 1 champion as well for Burst eSport. Teams here have up to 4 drivers in their field as well. So some have 1, some have 2. A mixture between that you'll see from the drivers. They'll then be getting themselves ready for that race. Just 5 seconds to go down. Another honourable mention is probably Visceral as well, getting themselves in with FSR. Good to see quite a lot of teams up and down the field. And Zach, it's going to be a great event. Starting with this sprint race is, of course, quite a lot to be sort of worked out, and really just see who's going to overcome this car in a race situation.
Yeah, it's a whole different kettle of fish because you go from qualifying where you have unlimited laps, you can just you made a mistake, or you can just reset. Cool, you've still got 12.5 minutes left of the session to go and improve. Now it's you can't do that. You've got to be able to keep the car consistent, but also maintain a good bit of speed. As doing a bit of move like that from going into 10A and 10B, it's a good attempt, I suppose. But again, it's small things like that that can certainly add up. But again, with two different races, we've got two different races, vastly different in length. We've got the sprint race and the feature race. We're going, of course, into the sprint race first. It's only, what is going to be 8 laps overall in terms of racing, 9 plus the formation lap. But you've only got 8 laps to get these moves done, and it forces your hand. But you also have to balance that compromise of how aggressive do you want to be versus how likely do you want to play the risk of you getting involved in an early lap incident or things like that? Because while yes, you have to make those moves, you also don't want to throw it all away all in one. As a very impressive pirouette there, just in behind, coming down in towards T6. But yeah, again, that is the mentality of sprint races. That's why it's such a difficult task, especially in cars like these that are always going to be on the limit, ready to throw you out if you let them. It's going to be really, really interesting to see who can tackle the mammoth task that it is.
Yeah, so just to recap the format, we've got the two races. We've got the sprint and the feature race. In the sprint race, obviously, the sprint race, they just go to the end. But in the feature race, there is a mandatory pit stop as well, where the drivers have to take at least 2 tyres. Although the tyres are sided left and right in the pit menu. And of course, on a road course, is I guess mainly the rear tyres you'd probably look at in this car. So I would assume most drivers are going to go for the 4 tyres. In that regard, so there's certainly something to think about with that, and also with how the first grid is going to work. But for the race starts, we have a rolling start. This is a manual rolling start, so you will see the wonderful race director Anthony Nispon sitting in the safety car in P1 on the grid. They will roll around for the formation lap, and they will grid up towards the end of the lap. And then as we come through the final kink, the green flag will be called and we'll be able to go racing. So as Zach said, it'll look like it's 9 laps, but it'll technically 8 total racing laps for guys to do. No pit stop in this first race, Zach, so it's going to be all action. And do you have any sort of predictions on who you think is going to come out on top?
Oh, don't you dare. That is harsh. That is mean, Cameron. No,
Difficult.
honestly, I think it could be anyone. Anyone really realistically inside the top 6. Of course, they haven't got long to get those moves done, so you wouldn't say it's going to be someone who's starting P15 or whatever. But you've got Colin Spall, you've got Damien Skovron up there, Yannick Simoncic, Jake Jenahan. You've got all those greats who are going to be giving their absolute all to try and go out and win it. And I don't want to be all cliche like, oh, we don't know it's racing, but I'm going to be. I don't care. You can think what you want to think, but it is going to be a bloodbath out there in terms of who can win, because any one of them can, and it is going to be the smallest of margins that make the difference. But Jake Danahan from pole, Yannick Simoncic looked more comfortable in qualifying. I'm going to go with one of them too.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jake Denhan's been improving so much over the course of the last season. He's really, since he's joined sort of the whole Edge NetRex system at the beginning of this year, he's really started to get towards the front. He was standard sort of academy, sort of pro level driver. If you come to the sort of FSR ladder, that sort of area is where he sort of was. Jumped into WC maybe a little bit too soon, but he really started to step up by the end of the season and has improved a lot. And it's good to see that even when we come to this different form of racing, he's able to come. And maybe that's actually just a good word for NetRex and how they can develop a driver over the course of months.
We saw it as well with Adam Rainey, I think, as well. He was sort of I think when I first started with FSI, he was in the Academy Series, and now he's, doing really well, competing for top 10s in the World Championship. So NetRex have always been a really good team that are good at nurturing their drivers. And as well, just as a team dynamic, we saw multiple times throughout the season how they can utilize all of their cars to bring home a really good result for the team. So you can definitely tell that within NetRex, there is a solid foundation and a solid community to build upon. And go for the greater good of the team, and to be a part of that for Jake Dennehan definitely has been beneficial for him. And to now come into the Winter Series, which granted is maybe just for a bit of pride or things like that, it's still a good statement to make because it's something completely different. You've had to adapt to a completely different set of rules and a completely different car around circuits that we didn't visit over the course of the normal season. To be able to do that and jump in and put it on pole for someone who is still developing certainly is very, very impressive.
It is indeed. Yeah, I'm just so excited to see how that one can improve. But of course, we have the reverse grid system here. Just to give you a rundown of the points. So points are obviously for both races, but there is a difference in the points to balance that out a little bit. We have 40 points for the lead, for the win in the feature race, and only 25 for the sprint race. And that goes down basically by a couple of points and then 1 point per position, basically. So in the feature race, everyone from 36th onwards will get a point. In the sprint race, everyone from P24 onward gets a point. So there's loads of points on offer. Even if you're down in the midfield, every position will count, as we are obviously looking forward to see how these guys can get themselves towards the front as we jump to grid. Bit of a rundown as to what we're going to see from the field today. Is going to be a tight one, and it is going to be a very interesting order. Let's see how this one works on the grid. So we've obviously got Anthony Hitzbon there leading the way because he is in the safety car, followed by Jake Dennehan there, Yanni Simicic, and Chris Shepherd rounding out to the top 4. Then we have August Lana, Damien Skovron, Arda Erkan, and Colin Spork. They're rounding out the top 8 on the field as we work our way down. Even though you see more cars that you'll probably recognise, but some you won't. You've got Andrei Voznitsa, Costa, and Fabian Ballet there rounding out the top 12. And look out for those individual liveries as well to try and point out your driver that you're supporting. Barkley, Vac, Major, and Mirko Mancini there for Royal Blue Racing round out the top 16. Royal Blue's another one who's sort of done individual liveries, which is one to look out for. Borja Milan, Michi Hoyer, Donat Prodan, and Pinataro for the top 20 as well. Good to see quite a few different teams working their way through. Ryan Elliott, Celia Vaya, Mazidis, and Casper Nizio in the top 24 as well. So we've got Zancho back in FSR after their outing in the 2021 World Championship. There's the other Zancho of Bloomsheen in 25th. Harry Smith, Valente, and Lanos getting there in P28. And then we get to the last couple of pages. We've got Silvera, Danny Vandeny, Patrick Hanko, David Junt towards the back of the field. A little bit further back, of course, last drivers are Tucson and Patsidis and Duff there out for the final one. But here we come down in towards the final chicane. The drivers will be getting themselves for the grid, 120 k's an hour. And as we get through the final corner, they will then be able to, Jake Dennehan will be able to decide when he goes. Then Thomas Lenz, race director, will be calling the green flag as you come over the final corner. And let's see, let's get the Pro Cup Series started for 2022. Jake Dennehan on pole and Yanni Simicic next to him. Dennehan with a really good start, but it's a little bit further back where we're going to have to look. We've got the likes of August Lana, we've got Chris Shepherd trying to make our way. We've got Erkan in the middle as we're getting side-by-side action. One car going off there, a little bit wide as well. In the background, maybe one of the Visceral cars. Skovron trying to make his way up in towards the braking zone of turn 3 for the first time, with Colin Spork just coming in behind him as well. Certainly very tight as we come down through the S's.
Still a lot of positions to be disputed side by side there. Look at this go as we run through the S's. Even my word, still there side by side. You can see there Jan Wisnitzer, I think, getting the measure and getting the drive off the corner. Now bounding their way down in towards what is going to be T6 and T7, arguably two of the most important corners on the circuit. And now you have to run through. You have to make sure you get that drive off the corner. So far, a perfect start for our pole sitter, Jake Dennehan. He's still followed by Yanni Simicic and Chris Shepherd, who are your top 3. But look at how they run single file. The draft, the slipstream is going to play such a big factor in cars like these and at a track like this. Is Simicic eyeing up the race lead?
Well, it's certainly an opportunity to do so in, of course, just a shorter lap race than you'll have in some other occasions. And it's going to be certainly something that the drivers need to work out how they're going to attack this. Can they go full chat straight away? Or maybe they'll have to just reserve the tyres a little bit. Yanni Simoncic losing a bit of time there through the final chicane. And the drivers work their way through this lap to see where they can get themselves up to. And I'm sure the battles in the mid-pack are staying just as close.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's going to be carnage amongst that midfield. But already on to lap 2 of 8 then. Really got to get into the rhythm of things quickly. This is Fabian Barley on the back of his teammate of Mihoya just in front of him. But there's Costa making a couple of mistakes going through what is turn 4, and everyone kicking up a bit of dust as they run through, killing their momentum. So Costa and the Wanako car is going to have to set their sights forward, because August Lane as well has had a pretty dreadful start, now down to the back end of the top 10 there in 10th place. This is Thomas Flack on the back of Michi Hoy, a bit of contact. Michi Hoy goes sideways through turn 6, well held, but again, it's like karting in terms of packs like these. You're bumper to bumper with everyone in front of you, and you just can't afford to make a single mistake out of the fear of just everyone behind barreling their way through.
Yeah, the slipstream is pretty mega in this car, but it's also one of these things you have to judge what you're going to do in that situation, because are you just going to absolutely send it down the inside, or are you going to be able to sort of, obviously maybe not in the sprint race, but maybe when it gets to the feature, maybe just save that tiny bit of fuel, and that will change how much fuel you have to take at your pit stop. Shepard there all over the grass. You'll see the drivers doing that, pushing the limits indeed. But as it stands, Jake Dennehan is holding a pretty nice lead as it stands. But one thing you have to work out in this car is how much you push the rear tyres. You see the car sliding around a lot. If you overheat those rear tyres in a longer stint, even in sort of a 5-lap stint, you'll really be suffering with lap time when you get towards the end.
Yeah, and it's going to be almost impossible to bring those tyres back into a temperature unless you pretty much just go around, 10, 15 seconds off the pace, which no one wants. And you've got to really manage it, as you say, because even over the short distance of this sprint race, it can have the biggest of impacts, because out of pretty much every corner you can see the car sideways, and when you're under that much lateral load, the tires are naturally going to degrade much faster, and of course with the friction they're going to start to heat up, and it is just that negative feedback loop. You spin the rear tires, they heat up, you spin the rear tires, and it is just that constant loop of just not ideal situations in terms of your tires, for lack of a better term, really. So you do have to manage it. You have to be as smooth as possible as you can on the steering. But again, it all comes down to compromise. How much do you want to save your tires versus how much speed do you want to compromise mid-corner? Because if you save your tires towards the start, you don't want to be too far back come the end of the race when your tires are actually a lot better than everyone else's.
Absolutely, and these loads of cars there in the background going off as we're getting Lana here trying to get a bit of a run actually on Nico Barkley, who's done well to get inside the top 10. I believe it was August Lana who went wide potentially on that first lap. So one of the more white cars just struggling a little bit, but as it stands, going through is his teammate Darius Andrew there all over the grass through the S's section as the drivers try and work their way closer and closer together as we get towards this sort of important corners here, T6, T7. This is what sets you up for that back straight. But interestingly, we haven't seen too many cars flying over, because it all depends on the exit of that corner. You see so many drivers getting bad exits and wiggling their tail.
Yeah, for sure. Again, comes down to the lock differential at the back rear-wheel drive cars are these, and if you put the throttle down a little bit too quickly, it is going to be quite scary. This is Damien Skovron on the back of Erkan in towards 10A, 10B. Not quite close enough, but Erkan's gone in deep. This could allow Skovron to get the under and over. He's going to try and get the drive off. Tandem as they drift out of 10B. Has Skovron got the measure down in towards the final couple of corners? No is the answer to that question. And now Colin Spork and Jan Wasnitsa are into the mix as well, though this is definitely heating up to be a good fight for 4th place. But look how it's heating up for the front 3. Only 0.6 of a second cover them all.
Yeah, they're getting very close, and you can see how just one little mistake there from those two drivers has just let that battle, as you say, or Spork and Wasnitsa, get closer and closer. And that's going to be an interesting one. There's a car all over the grass in the foreground. Who is that? There's one of the blue car there. I think it's Matt Tewson actually going off. He's already a lap down. Colin Spork's made a mistake though, and Jan Wasnitsa has managed to get through as he came up there through turn 5. And potentially a bit of contact between the two, and Spork has dropped down there a position. Can Wasnitsa now get up towards the top 5?
He's going to head the train, and he's going to be the one leading the troops all the way towards that top 4 that they are all going to be aiming for. It could be sort of the ceiling that they were can attain in this race, as we see Jonas Simičić also all over the back of Jake Dennehan. Could we see a move for the race lead down and towards 10A and 10B? Yes, we can. Simičić on the outside has to tuck in behind, though, because Dennehan covers off his bases. He's got the drive off the corner, or has he? Because Chris Shepherd is a looming threat in this battle. Jonas Simičić arguably is in the worst place of the 3. He's having to look forwards and back, both to attack and to defend, and that pressure from Shepherd is going to be unrelenting for the final couple of laps. We've only got 3 laps left to go in this race, and it could be so decisive, because as each lap ticks down, as each corner ticks down, so too do the amount of opportunities for Simičić to win this race.
They certainly do. This part of the track is very hard to overtake, of course. In the S, is a very one line, but this is where you have to keep your rear tyres cool, and you have to then be able to get the exit of these couple of corners out onto that back straight for the opportunities to pass in Sector 3 and then Sector 1 again. We've had another car go around, Giannis Llanos for Netrex Grand Prix. He's gone around at turn 1 as well, but can Simičić this time around get the opportunity? Just a couple of laps left after this one. The opportunities are going, but Jake Dennehan starting to defend massively as we come down the back straight.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that Dennehan has got a world of pressure on his shoulders, trying to defend from a 3-time Formula Sim Racing world champion. Jonas Simičić looking for the move to the left-hand side. It will give him the inside for the chicane of 10A and 10B. Opts for the outside, though. Going to get the squeeze from Jake Dennehan. Late on the brakes, not quite late enough as they both squirm their way into the apex of 10A and 10B. Has Simičić got the drive off the corner? The answer to that is yes. Oh, my word. Dennehan tapped round. He's just been able to hold it. Simičić as well compromised his line. Shepherd closed the gap, and through all of that, as we go on to the penultimate lap of this race, Cam, they are still 1, 2, and 3 as they were.
Oh, they certainly are. I think there was definitely a bit of contact, wasn't there, between Dennehan and Simičić as they just got so close underneath the bridge. And this was certainly something that was sort of pre-warned to the drivers before the season. A little bit of rubbing here and there is, potentially allowed, considering the type of car. Simičić chunks the curb there, and those two drivers certainly using that to try and rub themselves up closer and closer together as they come towards the all-important final lap. In the background there, we're having to see Skovron and Nitsa having a bit of a battle to get themselves a good place in the top 5 as well. These guys come onto the back straight for the penultimate time, and this slipstream is going to be mega once again for Simičić. He hasn't been close enough to try and get the move stuck around the outside of turn 10A. Can he get towards the inside, though? Jake Dennehan knows that. He's going to go to the outside of turn 9. Simičić once again to the inside, which will turn to the outside in the braking zone. He has to go bold. He has to go brave around the outside. So given the space, actually, between the two drivers, Simičić up the inside of the final couple of corners. Jake Dennehan losing the lead. Can Chris Shepherd come through? No, he can't. But as we come on to the final lap, it's actually Jonas Simičić taking the lead and Jake Dennehan back down into second.
Oh, well, that is the first time he's relinquished the race lead all race long, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. 1 lap, 12 corners left in this race, and it is a 4-way fight for the lead. In fact, no, it's not, because Erkan's gone wide, and he's compromised his fight for the podium. It's between Jonas Simičić, Jake Dennehan, and Chris Shepherd for the race victory for the sprint racer. Car off as well as that Erkan going off through turn 4. I think it might well be Jan Wisnitzer is going to get caught up behind him, has to slam on the anchors. What a dramatic turn of events this is for the final lap. Is Simičić going to be able to seal the deal? He seems to have the pace measure over Jake Dennehan. Once he was in front, he is now unleashed from his chains, and here is Wisnitzer trying to get the move done on Erkan up in a 4th place. They're going to run side by side, but the 48 is going to go all the way around the outside. Is that going to be Damien Skovron trying to get into the mix? Oh, he's gone round. Oh my word, and we said there was going to be calamity, but this final lap has been so decisive.
It certainly has. The top 3 have spread out, but the issues behind, there was definitely contact there. Erkan having a horrible final lap. He was easy 4th place. He's now down to 7th, and maybe we'll have to see if penalties come his way. There's definitely contact there with Jan Wisnitzer, but out of the final corner on the final lap, is it going to be Simičić? Can he get the traction? Yes, he can. We come downhill. Simičić with a penultimate lap overtake to take the first victory of the season here for the Stockcar Pro Cup Series. The sprint race goes the way of Jonas Simičić. Jake Dennehan did such a good job but couldn't finish the deal, but that was a great battle between the two. Chris Shepherd having a nice result in 3rd place behind, with Damien Skovron and Colin Spork rounding out the top 5. We didn't even get down to see some battles a bit further down. Where has Jan Wisnitzer got himself? It looks like that's going to be about 25th, 26th place for Wisnitzer. That is going to be horrible from where he could have been there. He did such a good race.
Yeah, he drove phenomenally, and unfortunately for him, it just wasn't quite meant to be. But there's still the second race for him to try and make amends, to try and work his way back through the field. But what an opening race that was to the Winter Series here for the stock cars, and these guys really did put on a show. And that is only after 8 laps. We still have what is going to be a 27-lap feature race with the pit strategy as well. And Cam, I really can't wait.
I'm going to try and see if I can get a replay of the situation with Woznitsa. We'll see if we can go back far enough. Here it is coming. Oh, sorry about the driver names on the screen. Here it is coming into this couple of corners. Is there going to be some contact? Yeah, it looks like Erkan just touching the rear left corner, which meant obviously all the pressure was there. Woznitsa couldn't turn into the corner. But then the issue for him is that they obviously had all these cars coming up behind him as we come down this back straight, and that is certainly not what Woznitsa would have wanted to see. That's a very, very tricky situation for him to be in, and I'm sure he's going to be ruining that issue because that has obviously cost him quite a lot. There was further contact with another TX3 car, Remco Major, and getting spun around by Tomasz Rak as well. So a horrible, horrible end to the race here for Jan Woznitsa.
It's heartbreaking, really, after the race that he had and the pace that he showed. It is really, really unfortunate, but after the drivers do their in-lap and peel their way back into the pit lane, this is how they racked up after the first race, Cam, and well, this is certainly how it's going to be racking up for the next few races, and I for one, can't wait.
It is indeed, and so we'll just run you over the point system again. So it's 25 points for the win in the sprint race. Then it drops down to 23 for second, and then it's 1 point, so 22, 21, etc. So Yoni Simčić now has a 2-point lead on Jake Dennehan there in second place, and that could potentially be crucial. We'll find out, of course, what the reverse grid is. It will be a random number from the grid maker between 8 and 12. And that will be chosen. So it's potentially anyone there from Nico Barkley in 8th place. And then as we go on to second, 12th place was Borja Milan. So any of those drivers will be spun around and put to the front of the grid. And that's a really good opportunity. And for the likes of Fabian Ballet, who potentially might miss out, that is going to be just a tricky situation. But that's how the random generator goes.
Yeah, well, you've got to make up those places and get yourself in the sort of the realm to be able to be eligible to get onto that reverse grid pole. But that's how the format works. And if you're not in it to win it, then that's a shame for you. But yeah, with how close it is a shame that some people are going to have to just unfortunately miss out a couple of times throughout the season with those reverse grids. But next up, we've got what is going to be 28 laps, including the formation lap, so 27. And with the pit strategy, we saw even in that race, only what was 8 laps of racing long, how big of a factor the tires had in terms of overheating and general tire wear. The grip was just gone for a lot of drivers, and it led to a couple of mistakes towards the latter end of an 8-lap race. Now they've got to be in a bit more conservative mode, though. They can't go all out as to run the risk of completely ruining those tires.
Yeah, they certainly don't. So the fuel is going to go somewhere in the region of 17, 18 laps. So that obviously leaves a further about 10 laps left. There's going to be that middle sort of third of the race, the middle 8 laps or so of the race, which is going to be the pit window. And that, of course, is going to be a crucial point because if you go early, then you have to take on more fuel, but then you get the new tyres earlier. So maybe that will be able to benefit you. But if you go really long, stay out on lighter fuel, yes, but then you have the older tyres potentially for longer and well. So it's certainly a balance that you need to do in there's an academy division as well, second tier that we did before this, and I myself racing and I managed to win the race, and I did the early stop. Kevin Morville did the later stop, and we actually had a nice battle towards the end. So there's certainly going to be potential for lots of things for these drivers, and it's going to be very difficult to predict how that one is going to work. So I'm pretty interested to see how over the course of a 28-lap race, how a driver manages that to not ruin the tyres or
Yeah, and that again is going to be where some of the more experienced drivers are going to come to the forefront. We saw in the sprint, it didn't really matter much. You could just go flat out for the entire thing and not really matter as much because you're not really having to take those tires anyway in the race. It was just go flat out for 8 laps and then boom, you're done. But now you have to be mindful of what you're doing, how you're applying yourself, and where you want to be come the long game, because it's so easy to go flat out early on in the session and then compromise yourself later on. As opposed to those that are going to conserve a little bit more and then be better off towards sort of the later part of this stint. But again, even though it's only what is going to be 27 laps long, there's still a massive element of strategy, whether you take just 2 tires or the 4. Again, with fuel, making sure you've got enough to get to the end and to do obviously your in lap to back to the pit lane as well. It's just a massive headache that the driver is going to have to try and deal with. And yeah, it's just going to be one certainly to watch. It's something. It's a new prospect for everyone. We're going in definitely into an unknown, so it's going to come with experience as the season goes on. What works, what doesn't quite work. But again, even with that, with the calendar, you go to a different circuit, a different style of racing each time you come. For each week. So it's not like it's something you're going to get used to. It's something that you're going to have to adapt to and just try and just work it out on the fly, really use that experience that you might have picked up elsewhere and then apply that here.
Absolutely, and while the drivers just getting themselves ready for the grid for the next race, we'll just run you over the schedule again. So today is the Road Atlanta 100. Before we go to Gateway, the new worldwide technology race day that was added to rFactor 2 for a short oval, and that one is interesting because you actually have to brake for the corners, even though it's an oval, which is going to be a quite an interesting one, but yeah, just slightly longer race there. And then we go to California, the Apple Valley Speedway that you've seen in some previous iterations of the Indy Pro Series, and that will be, of course, Speedway for the drivers on the 30th of October. And a couple of weeks later, we'll have the Daytona 225. And if you want to get yourself involved in just the Daytona 225, then you can sign up just for that one. There'll be a sort of pre-qualifying race that will get the grid up to 45 cars. So any cars extra beyond the pro grid drivers, up to 45, however many spaces that ends up being, they will obviously be available through that qualifying race as well. So check out the FSR forum, get yourself involved in that one. So certainly going to be a fun event, Zach, and I'm looking to see how this one continues, especially when we get to those ovals.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's not something that we typically often see and again, it's something different, and based off how race 1 has just gone, the sprint race here for Road Atlanta should be an interesting prospect. I hope everyone at home is going to enjoy join us for the ride all the way through, and of course with the spectacle of the season of the Daytona 225 to round us off on the 13th of November as well. It's short and sweet, short and snappy, but certainly a good one. Definitely quality over quantity in terms of a series like this. But yeah, we'll scream it from the rooftops. We'll talk about it week after week about how interesting this format is, and of course the level of drivers that we've got as well. It's not like we've got any mean slouches on the grid. No, we've got a good 30 and of course 45 for Daytona. 45 of some of rFactor 2's and Formula Sim Racing's top drivers going at it on circuit. You can't really ask for more.
Yeah, you certainly cannot. And this car, I think, is going to do wonders. It seems to work on all of the track configs, and if it wasn't made aware previously, the 4 tracks have been chosen because there are 4 different configs of this car, being the road course, oval, the speedways, and then the super speedways. All of them have slightly different car characteristics and settings and engines as well, with the restrict plate for the super speedway. So it's certainly going to be a different factor at all of those tracks, and see how that works how that works itself out, because the drivers need to master that. And I think a couple of the teams are going to potentially do better now because it's a road course and they know that style of racing compared to when we get to the ovals. And the ovals in the stock car are completely different to what we had in the IndyCar the last couple of seasons in our off-season championship, because it's so less capable in the corners. You actually have to lift off and use brakes and have a bit of mentality about your race.
And ovals, it's It's easy to say, oh, they're just driving around in circles. I mean, yeah, vastly that is true, but it's a lot more than that, and it is a sort of a stubborn mentality that I did hold for a while until I actually sort of got introduced into what actually goes on in an oval race. Even if even just a short oval, there's still a lot of things going on. You're having to work your way through and compete with the pack that's going on around you. You make one wrong move and you're going to get freight trained by 4 or 5 cars, and you lose all that ground, lose all that momentum. You've got to think about your tires and your fuel all the way through the race. And of course, when you're trying to do an oval and brake, and you've also got 10 cars queued up behind you, that Constantina effect, there's so much going on that it's a lot more than just driving around in circles. So when we do get to those short ovals, and of course with the bigger ovals as well, where you are flat out for the entire lap, it's yes, easy to say on paper that it's going to be, just a walk in the park because they're driving in circles, but definitely not. And it does take a lot of skill to succeed at a top level in oval racing.
It's a different style, and that's why we've gone for this. When it was announced, obviously people saying things along the lines of, oh, how come Formula Sim Racing is going tin top racing? But it's just something a bit different. It's something that the drivers need to master. They need to get themselves in a different mindset, and it's certainly something that it's going to be a bit of fun to see how the drivers are adapting. And it seems to be that whilst it's all different, you still see a rough order, because as we were mentioning earlier, Denham's really improving this year. He's straight to the front. Simčić, obviously 3-time world champion. He is straight to the front as well. So it's kind of funny how that sort of works itself out. And even though it's a completely different car, you still see the cream rise to the top.
Yeah, because those top drivers, the top drivers for a reason. They're up there not only because they can drive one discipline of racing well, it's because they can do many. And not only that, but they can use their experience from other categories and other series to transfer into this one, use that experience and apply it in a different way, and still rise to the top. Because you still maintain the same racecraft and decision making that you would from any other series in any car. It's just adapting your driving style, making it slightly different here and there, and being able to run consistently. Of course, you are going to have specialists. You're not going to have everyone, even the likes of Yannis Simčić, be the fastest in a Formula car and the fastest in a stock car. But what's good about Yannis Simčić is he's going to be really, really good in both, and it's that crossover again that really does lend himself to be so versatile and so good in pretty much whatever you put him in.
And as the drivers in the background get onto the grid, let's see who got the reverse grid pole position, and let's take a bit of a guess to see, of course, Anthony driving the safety car. So it's Nico Barkley on that pole position with Ercan and Darius Andre. So maybe Ercan's issues in the final couple of laps might have helped him in this one, starting from those front couple of rows. Colin Spork, Damien Skovron, Chris Shepherd and Jake Dennehan there rounding out the top 8 as the drivers go there on to their formation lap. Then that will be Yannis Simčić, the sprint race winner, starting from 9th place, and then Ricardo Costa, Paul Lana and Remco Major rounding out top 12. So these couple of drivers are unlucky to miss out there. Borja Milan, Fabian Ballet and Donat Prodan, also Tomasz Fak, they're rounding out the top 16. And remember, these places now are where they finished in the previous sprint race a few minutes ago. Pinataro, via Mancini and Michi Hoyer there rounding out the top 20 there. So definitely look out for these guys in the mid-pack to try and make some positions on the strategy. Mazidis, Blumschein, McDuff and Patrick Hanko there for the top 24 positions. As we get towards the slightly lower end of the field, but don't rule out these drivers. David Junt, Danny Van Den Neet, Jan Vosnitzer, he's going to want a better race than he had. Casper Nizio there for the top 28. Going to have Lianos, Ampatzidis, Harry Smith and Matthew Touston, who we saw having a couple of issues here and there for top 32. And at the end, the last couple of drivers will be Ryan Elliott and Silvera there. As we jump towards the front, we will see Nico Barkley leading the way for the drivers as we come out onto the back straight. And once again, the drivers are gridding up into their 2x2 formation as Anthony Nitzpon goes back into the pit lane. Can the Monaco driver get a good run? As we saw Jake Dennehan do, he has control of the drivers. He can choose when to go once we get to basically the final kink right at the bottom of the hill. And then green flag will be called as we go for the feature race for the Pro Cup Series for 2022. The second race of the evening here for the Road Atlanta 100.
Green.
And Nico Barkley takes it away from pole position. A great start in the background from Colin Spork. He's potentially getting up into second place all the way around the outside. It's going to be for him, as in the background there, we're seeing Erkan trying to battle, trying to hold on to that position that he's lost out as Skovron there tries to come through the middle as well. Bit of contact, bit of rubbing between the two as we come through the chicane. And Erkan's pushed off there in the background. Andre around the outside and Damian Skovron getting up into fourth place.
Brilliant start from Damian Skovron there. You can see everyone now running single file, but it's not a good start for Erkan. Once again, making the smallest of mistakes, getting caught up in the smallest of incidents, and unfortunately for him, has lost a bit of momentum. A car spinning off in the background there as well. That is so unfortunate. Going to collect on multiple cars as well. That's Mahor going round. I think the majority of people have been able to get away with it, but a couple of unfortunate souls have been dragged into those small incidents. And when you've got cars that are like this, you know, bumper to bumper all the way through the pack, it's going to be difficult not to expect crashes like that.
Yeah, that is a nasty place to have an accident as well. That is not the type of place where you want to be going around and having a spin, because you just get the drivers coming. We'll see if we can get a sort of a bit of a replay of that in just a few moments. But as we come to start the second lap here, Nico Barkley is leading the way by quite some margin, but it's Colin Spork who really made the move on that first lap.
Yeah, Colin Spork, a big gainer at the start of this race, really got the ball rolling and just used that momentum of people going slightly slower to his advantage. Went around the outside of two cars through turn one, but he's got Andre for company just in behind him in third place. But his priority at this point is to maintain the pressure on Nico Barkley in front of him, get as close as he can and try to get in front for the race lead. And we're having a look to the mid-pack. Our front runners in race number one, the likes of Jake Dennehan, Chris Shepard and Jone Simičić. They are 6th, 7th and 8th so far. So not major progress working through, but Jake Dennehan is certainly there, and with the long race that it is and the pace that those three showed, if they can clear the traffic quickly, it's going to be a big headache for Colin Spork later on in this race, and those sort of towards the front later on this race. So for Spork, if he's got the pace, he needs to use it now.
Yes, he certainly does. As the drivers come down, it looks like Jake Dennehan there is leading the way of a slightly second pack here. Chris Shepard behind him, as you say. And now Shepard actually getting a slight bit of a run towards the inside. Jone Simičić is coming towards the outside of them, but there's actually Shepard there down the inside. He leaves space, but on the two exit apexes, it's certainly very tight between there, but Shepard gets up into that position, into 6th place. Dennehan drops down once again. That's where he lost place to Jone Simičić as well, who's now right behind him.
Oh my word, this is going to be getting a little bit spicy over the next couple of laps. You can see there, that's Fabian Barley looking to the inside. They are going to go too wide, but it's going to fizzle out just a little bit. This is August Lan, I think, on the back of Jone Simičić and trying to put a bit of pressure going into the S's. But again, it's so difficult to go for moves, and the margin for error is so slim, especially in cars like this. It's so tricky to give the space that each other deserves. The smallest of things, the smallest of mistakes can end in, the most drastic of consequences of people spinning off and things like that. It's a long race. You're not trying to win the race this early on. It's good to get take a good couple of steps forward and set yourself up well for later on in the race. But again, it's so easy to throw everything away and have no shout come the latter stages of this race, because there's still a lot left to unfold.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it. We will have a look. I'm just trying to see if I can get this issue here with Remco Major. He's obviously had some sort of problem coming. This was back on lap 1. He's having some lag issues. That was what happened, I think. And then he got caught up inside one of the Wanako cars. And then unfortunately, I think that's Borja Milan going around as well. That is not the best time for those drivers to have an accident, as we said earlier, but certainly looking to be just a couple of issues for these drivers a bit earlier on in the races. Darius Andres got up into second place.
Got the move down on Colin Spork. Then it is now a four-way fight for the leader between Nico Barkley, Darius Andre, Colin Spork and Damian Skovron, with also Erkan there in the top 5. He's about a second back, couple of car lengths back. So as soon as these guys start to fight, we saw in race 1 how a lot of drivers who were a little bit further back, as soon as fights started to emerge, they closed the gap so quickly. And that's the thing with these cars. You have to maintain momentum. You have to keep the rhythm up. And as soon as that's compromised, you lose so much time. But Nico Barkley's still holding firm out in front. But again, it's a waiting game. It's It's the pit strategy. It's a game of chess of maintaining your tires, and drifts out of the exit of turn 7 like that. Not only you're not doing your run down towards turns 10A and 10B any good, also not doing your rear tires any good either.
Yeah, you're certainly not, as we're trying to see multiple drivers here have some looks, but it's now going to be Darius Andre as we come towards here. Lap traffic up ahead, that could potentially be a play. But Andre towards the inside, he's going for the lead here. Nico Barkley there on the inside, he's going to have a slightly worse exit. Now Andre though on the outside, Colin Spork trying to push his way through. Andre though, can he hold it around the outside? That's going to be a brilliant move, still side by side. Coming up towards 3 wide for the lead as Barkley leads across the line, but it's now going to be Colin Spork pushing him towards the front. Can Andre hold on though, because he's now on the outside of turn 1, which is a difficult place to be as we're getting cars on the pit exit. Nico Barkley there making contact with them, and who is going to finally lead in towards turn 3? Still more contact. Nico Barkley somehow is still leading this race. Colin Spork holds on for second, and it's now Skovron who's caught up, but who was that coming out of the pit lane as well, getting right in the mix?
Oh my word, it all kicks off at a moment's notice. All it takes is the one little spark and boom, it all ignites in flames. And yeah, well, this is going to be one to watch throughout the race. Nico Barkley still leads. Colin Spork managed to get back up in a second place, but Darius Andre is still putting that pressure on. Yeah, even after all that, there's still not any major changes in the running order of things, but Barkley leads. He's got a good couple of car lengths over Colin Spork, but with the slipstream, he might be able to close that gap. Bit of lap traffic just in front. Is Spork close enough to mount the attack on Nico Barkley down towards 10A and 10B? Is he going to be brave enough on the brakes? We can also see Skovron on the back of Andre, and actually having to go defensive more so than anything as Spork on Andre. And that's the thing, is as we said in race 1, having to look forwards and backwards. It's such a massive headache, but Spork's still maintaining that pressure for first place.
Well, he certainly is. This is a great battle. Spork, though, unfortunately goes onto the grass all the way down the straight, and there's obviously been an issue there, unfortunately. And that seems, that's a shame, because that was turning out to be a battle, but it seems there must have been an issue potentially with what we saw a little bit earlier with Remco Major, and it looks like the drivers unfortunately have had to stop their race for a second. Well, actually, no, it looks like it's come back, and it seems that Colin Spork there is in that second place still. So just potentially on my end, the preview of the stream, but let's see how this one continues. They're still going as it stands, with Nico Barkley leading the way, with Colin Spork in that second place, and that's certainly something potentially for the drivers to think about, but they're all going, and they're still continuing as it stands.
Yeah, fingers crossed that we can get through the rest of this race with no issues. But hey ho, that's it's how the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, sometimes Colin Spork still on the back, and Nico Barkley trying to put some pressure on, but he might have to look in his rearview mirrors more than anything, because once more Andre wants that second place, squirming under the brakes. Oh my word! Andre somehow has hung on to that, and it just goes to show how twitchy and squirmy these cars are, because he definitely would have been cramping his left leg trying to keep that in check as Nico Barkley, Colin Spork run onto the grass as they run in towards turn 12. And Andre, because of that mistake, is now under a world of pressure from everyone behind him. Here comes Damien Skovron to the inside. Is he going to hang on from Erkan, who's going to try and go the long way round? Not quite going to be able to. Got the measure, trying to go over and under. Not quite got the drive in towards turn 3 and 4. But Skovron and Andre definitely had a little bit of a squabble there because of Andre's bit of a mistake in towards the chicane.
Yeah, what an event Erkan is having. He's going up, he's going down, and all over the place, and just another battle that he was involved in there. Skovron getting himself up nicely. He was one of those people who sort of in the middle of that reverse grid, so he sort of didn't really gain or lose positions as such, and that's a good place for him to be in for now. But now we're getting some more lap traffic. I think that's Voznitsa maybe coming out onto the back straight. That's not the way that he would have wanted. I believe it is, unfortunately for him, the number 38 machine as we come down the back straight once again through the kinks of turn 8 and 9. And is Skovron now potentially going to be able to make a move up towards the front, as unfortunately it looks like I've had a bit of an issue again. We will have to just speak with race direction, see what they want to do about this, and how that's going to work out for the drivers, which is a bit of a shame, because this is turning out to be actually some quite nice battles on track.
Yeah, it is a shame if it doesn't go to plan, because again, how this race has been shaped up, it is just going to be a big shame, especially after not being able to get the season underway last week. But yeah, there was a lot of prospects to maybe look forward to. Hopefully things can be sorted out in race direction. I'm sure we're going to take the appropriate course of action. We are back to the live feed, and it is still Nico Buckley that leads the way from Collinsburg. Damien Scovra on P3, Darius Andre and Erkan 4th and 5th. But yeah, still going at it and still having their own little skirmishes, but a lot kicking off in the background there.
The race has been
Oh,
red
so we are getting
due to
the reason why.
excessive lag issues and disconnects. We will get back to you on the course of action shortly.
Yeah, so it has been red flagged. So obviously it has come back, but we'll see. So the drivers for now will be going back to the pit lane, and of course there is a procedure for this with what happens. We completed 7 laps of the race, and then it comes to a percentage factor with how that then works its way out. Works its way out into what's happened. So that we might be seeing a little restart here. We might not. We'll get back to that. But essentially, Road Atlanta is causing all sorts of carnage.
Oh yeah, I mean, what were we expecting? I mean, the recipe certainly was there for some good racing, and fingers crossed we can get back on track as soon as possible. But unfortunately, some things are just a little bit out of our control, and these things do happen from time to time. But yeah, that race definitely was shaping up to be certainly a good one with the likes of Jake Danahan and SimRacing and Chris Shepherd fighting their way through the field, and also that fight towards the front of just everyone going at it, fighting for that race lead. Didn't quite get to see what the pit strategies were looking out to be, but again, that's also something to look forward to. And yeah, again, not entirely sure as to what course of action, race direction are going to take. Of course, we do expect it to be the appropriate and right course of action, but yeah, it is a shame when these things happen, because it does unfortunately just ruin the spectacle just a little bit.
It does, and of course, if we do get a restart, that will then turn into obviously a brand new grid, and the things like the fuels and stuff will be set. So this, of course, will be just looked into. Give our race direction a few minutes to make a decision on what they wanted to do. But as it stood, we had Nico Barkley there leading the way, and he was obviously having a good race. He got into that reverse grid. He managed to hold on, and then there were some mega fights behind as well. So definitely, I think Nico Barkley is potentially someone to look out for, because he's maybe not one of the drivers to win if it was a complete if it was a fair race is what I'm trying to think of. If it was a fair race, he probably wouldn't win. But the fact that he's been given places with a reverse grid, he now has the opportunity to get a good race, and that's probably why he was really trying to hold on to that place at the front with that mega battle.
Yeah, again, it comes down to what we were saying a little bit before in the pre-show and during qualifying of how these reverse grids sort of shake the order up a little bit. Going from a qualifying into a race, everyone's where they, 9 times out of 10 where they should be, unless someone's completely bottled qualifying or something, or rather you would expect those that are going to be quick to be towards the front, and then they're going to be the ones that 9 times out of 10 again translate those that pace into a win. But with Nico Barkley, he's a driver that's, again, didn't quite put the lap together in qualifying, wasn't quite up there in race 1, but because he was then able to start further ahead with a clear track ahead of him in race 2, he was able to use what pace he did have, which isn't slow by any means.
So
it's just not quite Jerne Simoncic or Chris Shepherd or things like that, and was able then to
from the order that
stretch an advantage and get away. And it's opportunities like that where drivers like Nico Barkley can step up.
That out now for the grids. So if you can rejoin the server,
listening to what race direction is saying, and it sounds like we are going to attempt a restart. I found the rules. So basically, the by the rules, the race is split into thirds effectively. So if we get up to 33%, then if the failure happens before 33%, say a restart will be attempted with the grid from the last most accurate order possible for the race director to attain. Data is lost in a situation like this, and then if it got above 33%, so only a couple more laps, and half points would have been automatically awarded, but we didn't quite get that far. So a restart will be attempted, and then we will just see how that one works. So I think to hear Anthony say about lap 7 is the order that we are going from at the time of one of those lags. So Zach, this is a big thing for the drivers now to reset, to get back in, because of course there's going to be another race start.
We'll be going for 20
Yes,
laps,
listen.
21 laps including formation. So please account for that in your calculations.
21 laps. So yeah, we are going to be getting basically a continued race, and we're just going to reset from where we were.
Yeah, it's a second chance as well for those that didn't quite get off to the best of starts. And also, if you did get off to a good start, you might need to hope that you can get lucky maybe again to get off to an even better start. Like for Nico Buckley, got off perfectly for the first start, but now for the restart might not go quite as well for him. And it's that, again, that unknown, that uncertainty that goes into each race. That is why we go motor racing and things like that, because of it can just flip on its head so quickly. It doesn't matter how quick you are, doesn't matter who you are. It is so indiscriminate that Lady Luck might not just fall and shine upon you on that particular event. But fingers crossed it can all go smoothly and things like that. Shortened race distance, but it is going to be sort of everyone where they were, the same pecking order as we were just witnessing towards the first start of race number 2. So looking forward to seeing how it's going to play out.
It is going to be a big one for the likes of Barkley there to get back in. The likes of Spork. Remember, he had such a good start there. From I think it was about 4th place that he started. He managed to get himself really up there, always in 2nd place from the start. And then you have people like Erkan. He was really going backwards. So for these drivers, then to then try and have the opportunity, maybe they can sort of learn something from their mistakes.
Again, with each experience you learn, and you try to apply yourself in a different way in future, try something slightly different. If you maybe accelerated a little bit too early in race for the first restart, maybe try a little bit later, or vice versa. If you got off to a bit of a slow start and fell back, maybe try to anticipate the jump a little bit better. Try not to base your braking point off other people or anything like that. Make better decisions, go for the inside line as opposed to the outside line, or back out of these moves and here, there, or other. It's the mistakes that you make that then contribute to how good of a driver you can be in future, because you learn almost in a sense more from your losses than you do from your wins. Yes, winning is awesome, but if you don't lose, you don't know how to come back even better. If you win race after race or do really, really well, succeed how you want to, you're going to fall into that complacent mindset and not try to improve. Whereas if you lose, make those mistakes, you can then come back, as I say, apply yourself in a different manner and then be better. So definitely look out for some shakeups for this second restart.
Absolutely, and this is going to be a big factor for what they choose regarding the strategy as well. Because from memory, when we don't get, or if we do get a full, I believe for instance, like the tire rule still counts, but then obviously have to see how that works with the server as well. So certainly, potentially, some risks could be played with the strategy and with the rules. And how that one is going to work out, because some drivers might take the risk to stay out, and maybe we'll have to see. But of course, a lot of these teams do have engineers and strategists with them, trying to work out what the best is going to be. As we said, the maximum distance is about 17-18 laps on a tank. With 21 left, they are going to have to pit anyway.
And it's again, we as commentators and drivers and strategists alike are going into this race on an unknown, because it's not something they've really endeavored into before. Of course, they put out however many hours they wanted to into practice, and they know sort of how they're going to approach this, but they couldn't have expected a restart with this exact amount of laps left to go, with this exact scenario. You can't just predict it. So it's about thinking on your feet and being prepared, and trying to thrive in these unknown and sticky situations, more so because, as you say, the fuel can last 17 laps. That's not quite enough to get your full race distance. So you are still going to have to come into the pit lane. You are still going to have to change your tires. But is it a case of just changing 2 as opposed to changing 4 and saving yourself those 4 extra seconds? Do you take the track position and try and hang on with your set of tires, or do you whack on a fresh set, take those 4 seconds, have less time to utilize them properly, but still have the quicker? But we are soon getting ready to go, as we're getting word in our ear that the grid is getting set up very, very shortly. So I'm sure we're going to have answers to all our questions very shortly, Cam.
Yes, we certainly are, and the drivers as you say, will be getting themselves onto the grid, and they will then be lining up for what will now be a 21 lap race. So we had 7, but now we stopped then, and we're taking the order from that point, and starting 21 laps remaining in the race. And the so yeah, as I said, the order should be approximately there. Of course, as mentioned previously, with how the rule is worded, it's the best, most accurate possible order. When things like this happen, it may not be the 110% most accurate, but is trying to get drives in the pretty much the order that they were in. That is fair as possible, and it's like the race directors have decided lap 7 was where they could gain that. It'll be important. It will be a restart again, a safety car start, rolling start, as we had previously. So that is something to contend with. And Zach, that adds in another lap 1 where the cars are close together. We saw a big crash on the previous start as well. So that is always something for the drivers to keep in the back of their mind.
Lap 1 is always, well, usually the most chaotic point of the race, unless it's a manic race and one that we always love to see. But lap 1, everyone's so close together. You know, you're surrounded by cars, especially in that mid pack. You've got, you know, half the grid in front of you, half the grid behind you. You've got such an overwhelming sense of all your rivals around you, trying to negotiate your way through, pick the best decision, and you're having to do it, you know, within tenths of a second, and to decide the right one every time is going to be quite tricky. And that's why we see those mistakes on lap 1. That's why those crashes happen. That's why those cars go off, and that's why those positions are made or lost. It's about managing it as well as you can, making compromises in terms of your aggression levels and you know, how swiftly you want to work your way through the field, because, and also depends on your aspirations. If you're going into this race with nothing to lose, you're going to go on lap 1 and say, well, whatever, I'm just going to go for it and see where I end up. But if you're maybe someone who's aspiring to do really well, you might have that sort of tentative mentality of saying, let's not quite go full out. Of course, I do want to make up some places while everyone's still close, but for some people, it's not worth the risk of just taking themselves out on lap 1.
Absolutely, but now gives another opportunity for someone who maybe dropped back to then come forward. Really the biggest factor that you have to do. You can't go overboard, but then at the same time, you have the opportunity to gain places. So it depends what you want to it depends what you want to what position you want to put yourself in, and to where you want to go. As you say, are you going to try and go for the championship? Are you going to just try and get yourself into maybe the top 10 in the championship? Is that really going to be your goal? We will find out as the drivers should be gridding up, work out really what position they are going to be in. And of course, as I said, the order is there, the most accurate backwards, and that is the easiest thing to work out, but it should be all the drivers should be roughly where they are. Get to the next.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Again, it's just that anticipation and that nerve starting to creep in, maybe for a couple of drivers, especially Nico Barkley right towards the front, because again, as we say, it's an unknown. You know, he got off well in race 1. Is he going to get off to start 1 of this race? Is he going to get off to an even better one, or an even worse one for start number 2? He looks so secure, and now that foundation definitely has an opportunity to crumble.
Indeed, but crumbling is obviously not what you want to be doing in situations generally when you're in a championship. Even though this is a short season, there's 4 rounds, but there's a total of 6 total races. There's not too many, but if you want to challenge, you still need to be there fighting at the front, and you need to be consistent.
And just as
the
a
ones
reminder,
who come out
the mandatory pit
are going
stop
to be
still
good.
applies
And
in this format.
we're just mentioning.
So good luck, guys. Hopefully, no more restarts.
Yeah, the race direction, just mentioning what I was saying earlier, how obviously as we still potentially assume to get the full race distance covered, and of course with there still being about 75% left of the race, drivers will still be required to make that stop, which interesting factor, because now do they leave it until maybe 3 laps to go, or do they potentially do the opposite and pit after 3 laps and then try and get themselves into some clear track position?
again, it's where you are in the race. So I'd say if you are sort of towards the mid pack, towards the back end of the field, to go early, because then you can have some laps by yourself. If you're towards the front, you've already got some track to yourself. You're already clear of everyone around you, and unless you've got people hammering in behind you, putting some pressure on, it's worth to go late because you're already having that free track to just do what you want. But it's good for a couple of drivers just to get out of that mid-pack carnage. And if they can do that and put some clear laps in relative to everyone else, when it does eventually come around to doing that pit window, it is going to be, fairly interesting. The only problem to that is that you can't properly utilize the advantage of some fresher tires, because for those that are going to pit later, they're going to be on fresher tires at the end. Those that pit early are going to be on Warner tires towards the end, but fresher tires at the start. But everyone else is going to be on fresher tires at the start. So it is just going to come down to sheer speed to build up that relative.
The speed always wins, let's be honest. If you're fast, even in a short race, in a long race, generally come out on top as long as you're not hitting every single lap for new tyres to be fast, of course. But for sure, the likes that we saw in the sprint race of Shepard, Simičić, Denahan as well, if they can work their way forward just on pure speed, I think that's really what's going to be the thing that's going to help them out in this situation. But also staying cool, staying calm, and really trying to try and see if they can just be the one to make the right decision. It can be so easy to potentially overthink a situation like this, make the wrong decision, and then try something a little bit too crazy. So maybe what I was mentioning about the 3 laps is possibly not quite the right one. We might see people pitting a little bit more half and half, as we are getting the cars on the grid now, as we can now try and see exactly the starting order that we will be getting for this race. Get that on the screen for you. So as we said, it'll be Nico Barkley, Colin Spork, and Darius Andre leading you through the way out top 3. Then we're going to be getting Damian Skovron, Erkan, Shepard, and Jake Denahan to round out that top 8. So still some work to do for the likes of Denahan, and then following him will be Yanni Simičić from that sprint race. Still some work to do for them to get up back into the top points paying positions. Ballet, Lana, and Carlo Costa there rounding out the top 12. Got Vac, Pinataro, Yunt, and Bayer to round out the top 16. And this is going to obviously continue the way down the field as the drivers still come into the places that they were on about lap 7 of the race. Mancini, Mazidis, Smith, and McDuff for race coach there down in P20. So McDuff actually made up a few positions there. Van den Eet, Borja Milan, Hanko, and Nizio there rounding out to the top 24. Just a couple of people left, and it looks like one of the burst cars there dropping down the way. Tucson, Lianos, Blumsheen, and Prodan going down to 28th place. There will just be another couple of cars with Vosnitzer, Major, and Ryan Elliott there. A couple of drivers not coming to take restart. So certainly a fun prospect for some of these drivers as we come to the restart here. And as always, it will be a rolling start. However, I wonder, Zach, if it's going to be a single file restart. We will find out.
Yeah, we'll wait and see if everyone bunches up and gets into their 2 wide rows. I think that might be the case because Colin Spork is pulling alongside Nico Barkley, as you can see there. Anthony Nickbon is zooming off in the safety car. Everyone bunches up. Nico Barkley to the pole position slot. Colin Spork's going to line up alongside him. And Colin Spork wasn't quite close enough to go for a move on Nico Barkley throughout the first portion of the first start of this race. Now he's right next to him. So Colin Spork could eye up the race lead.
You certainly can, but let's get this race restart underway. The feature race, part 2, is about to get underway. This is a continuation from where they were on lap 7. Nico Barkley leading the way. Colin Spork, he got a good start last time in 2nd place. Let's see how this race continues. Still 21 laps left. Green flag is underway. Bit of a wiggle from Nico Barkley, but he seems to be able to manage to hold on. We've got Damian Skovron trying to get involved there. Erkan as well. Cars in the background already. We saw some carnage there. One of the cars going for a bit of a spin. I wonder if it was one of the ground perfect cars. Like coming into turn 3 though, Jake Dennehan trying to make some moves. He's already up a position there into that 5th place, or is it even 4th place? No, 5th place for him. And then we're getting Damian Scovron there in that 6th place, trying to work his way through as they come through the S's.
The first time in all single file as they run their way through. Nico Buckley did really well to consolidate his pole position into a race lead come the first half of lap 1. A couple of moves towards the backside in towards the midfield. Everyone just trying to figure out where they want to be and if they want to go for these moves. Here's Roberto Pinataro up to 11th place and trying to get himself inside the top 10. He's got Thomas Wack just in front of him, and Yannis Simicic has really fallen backwards, unfortunately for him. He's down into P12. Not getting off to the best of starts behind Pinataro, but still a lot of time left in this race to maximize his opportunities and work his way back forward, because if anyone can do it, Simicic can.
Yeah, we were just seeing there in the background, but you're having another bad start once again, and that's not going to be where he would have wanted. Roy McDuff, he was in P20. He's already made up some positions. Now trying to get past David Yunt, coming through the final couple of corners, turn 11, turn 12, Yunt just blocking him off, and then Super Venturi around the outside of Casper Nizio making up his position. Very opportunistic there, even for the lower places. And now Casper towards the outside of turn number 1. This is not a place where you want to be overtaking just about, but it seems like they are working their way through nicely as there's some cars off once again. One of the TX3 cars going for another mistake, another issue there. I think that's Pinataro as we come through turn 1.
It was a good start for Pinataro, so a shame to see him tumble down the order. Now going to rejoin, I think, around about P19 on the timing tower, which is a shame for him, but again, you have to be consistent as they all sort of skate off towards the exit of turn number 5. And unfortunately, maybe we are experiencing similar issues off this restart. But what we can say is Nico Barkley still leads from Colin Spork and for your top 3, but still always it's going to be a chaotic start to get us underway.
Certainly will, and we'll just see if this one comes back like it did before. But of course, as we mentioned, there was there needed to be obviously minimum lap counts and things like that for things like points. But let's see, it has come back though. David Yunt still leading that battle as it stands. Casper Nizio dropping down. Roy McDuff trying to work his way a little bit further up. Let's see how Jake Dennehan was doing. Actually, Damien Scovron has done engine blow in the front. Who is that? Darius Andre has blown his engine coming in towards turn 1. That must have been just over revving the car, and from such a good position, P3, he is now going to be out of this race.
That is heartbreak for Darius Andreas, of course, promoted Erkan up into the podium places, but the small mistake, and it's cost him dearly. He's now out of the running of the feature race here for round of the Formula SimRacing Stockcar Pro. Is a big shame for him, but again, everyone else, they're in the same car. They can sort of make the same mistakes, and it is down to that consistency of making your way through. But you do have to feel for him, because for Darius Andre, for a driver like him, for what could have definitely been in this race.
Yeah, certainly. We'll have to see how this one goes with the lag, though, and see just what the race direction
decide. We will not be going again per the rules.
And it seems like we are going to be getting a red flag, which is a bit of a shame.
We'll let you know about what's going to happen in regards to this round later on. We're not quite sure if we have passed the quota to award half point for this race. When we know more, we will let you know. But very sorry about this, guys.
Yeah, so it seems like as we are going to be getting a red flag there, which is a bit of a shame. We had some great racing today. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to continue and complete that, but there was definitely some good opportunity for racing here. Here at Road Atlanta, but unfortunately, it looks like we are not going to be getting the full 28 laps.
A big shame, and again, it is a little bit out of our control. We can't really help it, but it is not the way you want to see the season get underway for sure, but definitely a lot of potential for what is left to come for the FSR Pro Cup Series over the next few weeks, whatever happens to Road Atlanta. Again, as I'm sure the race director team is going to get the appropriate course of action to take, and we will take it, of course, and be in the best position we possibly can be in. But again, unfortunately, issues have stricken, and is a shame because it was such an anticlimactic end to what could have built up to be such a good race.
Yeah, it is going to be a difficult one, but we will have to see as what happens. We do have, of course, 3 more events in this championship. So Race Direction will go over what they can for this race. We'll see what results can be attained. We, of course, had the sprint race at least completed for you, with Yerny Simičić leading the way in that one from Denahan and Shepherd. But for this one, looks like it is going to be all over for the Road Atlanta 100. But next week, we do go into the Gateway 150. So that's a short oval. Got to be braking on that track, something a little bit different for them before we get to the California 175 and the Daytona 225 a couple of weeks after that. But that's going to pretty much round up here from Road Atlanta. Myself, Cameron, Rodger, and Zach Sweeney bringing you through the action that we did have. Hopefully you enjoyed the racing action that you did see, at least in that sprint race. And we will try and get a confirmation of the results as soon as possible. So do follow the FSR forums for that one. But that's going to be it for here at Road Atlanta. We hope you enjoyed the action that you saw. But until next week for the Gateway 150, wish you very warm goodbye.